A journey of reflection. Have you ever felt like your mind is a storm, constantly swirling with thoughts you can't control? Thoughts of the past, worries about the future, and the quiet whispers of regret that follow you through the day. If you have, you're not alone. In fact, many of us reach a point in life when we find ourselves caught in this whirlwind of negativity, wondering if peace is ever possible again. Meet David, a 72-year-old man who, just like many of us, once lived a life filled with purpose and joy. A retired teacher, he spent his younger years teaching, laughing, and enjoying time with his family. But after the death of his beloved wife, Maria, his world felt like it had crumbled. The once vibrant man who would greet each morning with enthusiasm now spent his days locked in a battle with his own thoughts. Memories of his wife, his regrets, and fears about the future haunted him day and night. One evening, as he lay in bed staring at the ceiling, his mind racing with thoughts he could never seem to quiet, something unexpected happened. He remembered a simple, yet profound piece of advice his wife had shared with him many years ago. Your mind is like a garden. Whatever you water will grow. These words echoed in his thoughts, but at that moment, David didn't quite understand what they meant. It was this very night that he realized he had spent years watering the weeds of negativity and worry. His thoughts, filled with regret and fear, had become his reality. But could he change it? Could he learn to shift the course of his mind, just as one might tend to a garden, pulling out the weeds and planting seeds of peace instead? David's journey toward finding peace, to transforming his mind from a place of constant turbulence to one of calm, would take him down a path that he had never anticipated. It would lead him to ancient teachings that suggested that the power to change his life was already within him, and it all began with how he thought. This isn't just David's story. If you've ever battled your own negative thoughts, you too can find the peace that comes with knowing you have the power to change. In this journey, we will explore how Buddhist wisdom teaches us to transform our minds, from being slaves to negative thought patterns, to becoming masters of our own happiness. If you've ever felt stuck, like you're unable to break free from the cycle of negative thinking, I invite you to stay with me through David's journey. By the end of this story, you might just discover that the key to true peace doesn't lie in changing the world around you. It lies in how you choose to perceive it. So, take a deep breath, relax, and let's embark on this journey together. If you find yourself relating to David's struggles or the teachings shared, please feel free to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support helps us all grow together. Let's dive in and explore the power of the mind in creating a life of peace and positivity. The power of thought, shaping reality from within. The morning light filtered through the window, casting long shadows across David's modest living room. He sat in his old recliner, staring at a steaming cup of coffee, lost in thought. It had been weeks since the sleepless night when his wife's words resurfaced in his mind. Your mind is like a garden. Whatever you water will grow. The phrase echoed within him, stirring something deep. He had spent years watering his regrets, his loneliness, and his fears. Was it possible that his suffering wasn't just a result of life's circumstances, but of his own thoughts? As he sipped his coffee, his phone buzzed. It was Michael, an old friend he hadn't spoken to in months. David. Michael's voice carried a warmth that David had forgotten existed. Let's meet for a walk. I have something I think you'll find interesting. Later that afternoon, David found himself strolling beside Michael in a quiet park. The wind rustled the golden autumn leaves, and children's laughter echoed in the distance. You've been on my mind lately, Michael said, glancing at him. I know how hard it's been for you since Maria passed. I won't pretend to have the answers, but I do know one thing. Our thoughts shape our reality. David frowned. That sounds like wishful thinking. Life happens to us, Michael. If my thoughts controlled my life, Maria would still be here. Michael smiled knowingly. I understand why you feel that way. But tell me, do you ever notice how two people can go through the same experience, but react completely differently? One finds peace, the other suffers. Why? David remained silent, so Michael continued. Buddhism teaches that the mind is like a mirror. It reflects whatever we put in front of it. If we fill it with fear, regret, and anger, that's all we see. But if we train it to focus on gratitude, compassion, and understanding, our entire experience of life changes. David scoffed, but his friend's words struck a nerve. For years, his mind had replayed the same painful memories. The hospital room, the beeping machines, the last moments with Maria. He had clung to these images as if they were carved in stone. But what if he had the power to shift his focus? What if his suffering wasn't solely about what had happened, but about how he kept reliving it? That night, as he lay in bed, he thought of a teaching Michael had mentioned. With our thoughts, we make the world. He had always believed that life was something that happened to him. But what if his perception was shaping his world more than he realized? David decided to run an experiment. Every time a negative thought surfaced, whether it was regret over something he had said to Maria or fear about growing old alone, he would acknowledge it, but then shift his focus to something neutral or positive. It wasn't easy. His mind resisted, pulling him back to its familiar patterns. But slowly, something changed. One morning, instead of focusing on the ache of waking up to an empty house, he noticed the warmth of the sunlight streaming through his window. Instead of lamenting the quietness, he appreciated the peaceful stillness of the morning. Days turned into weeks, and an unexpected shift began to take place. He didn't force himself to be happy. He simply chose where to direct his mind. Just as a gardener chooses what to plant. One afternoon, he found himself looking through an old photo album. A picture of him and Maria at the beach caught his eye. Before, this image would have triggered a flood of sorrow. But today, something felt different. The pain was still there, but it was softened by something new: gratitude. Gratitude for the years they had shared, for the love they had known, for the laughter that had once filled their home. Michael was right. The mind was like a mirror. For years, David had pointed it toward loss and suffering. But now, he was learning to shift it toward the light. He wasn't healed overnight. Some days were harder than others. But for the first time in a long time, he felt a glimmer of hope. If thoughts had the power to imprison him, then surely they also had the power to set him free. And so, he made a choice, not to deny his grief, but to see beyond it, to plant new seeds, to tend to his mind as he would a garden. As he closed his eyes that night, he whispered a quiet thought to himself. Tomorrow, I will choose what to water. Mindfulness, finding peace in the present moment. The rhythmic ticking of the clock was the only sound in David's dimly lit home. He sat at his kitchen table, fingers tracing the rim of his coffee cup, mind drifting between the past and future. It had become a habit, reliving old regrets, fearing what lay ahead. No matter how much he tried, he always found himself trapped in these cycles. That morning, he picked up a book Michael had given him, one about Buddhist teachings on the mind. As he flipped through the pages, a passage caught his eye. Most of our suffering comes not from the present moment, but from our mind's tendency to cling to the past or worry about the future. He read it again and again. It was such a simple idea, yet it felt like someone had reached into his mind and described his exact experience. He realized that his suffering wasn't just about Maria's absence. It was about how he kept living. In the moments that were already gone, David sighed, rubbing his temple. But how do I stop? That afternoon, he took a walk in the park, hoping the fresh air might clear his head. He watched a young boy chase after a balloon, laughing as it floated just out of reach. The child wasn't thinking about yesterday or worrying about tomorrow. He was just there, fully immersed in the moment. David envied that. That's when he noticed something else. For the first time in years, he actually noticed the crunch of leaves under his feet, the coolness of the autumn air, the way the golden sunlight filtered through the trees. He had walked this path 100 times before, but today he really saw it. That he stopped. What if I could live like this? That night, he called Michael. This book you gave me, he said. It talks about mindfulness, Suddy, right? It says that the present moment is the key to peace. But how do I actually do that? Michael chuckled. It's simple, but not easy. Try this. Tomorrow morning, when you drink your coffee, don't just drink it. Experience it. Feel the warmth of the cup. Notice the aroma. Taste each sip. Don't let your mind wander to the past or future. Just be here. It sounded almost too simple. But David had nothing to lose. The next morning, he sat with his coffee, just as he had done every day before. But this time, he paid attention. He felt the heat of the mug against his palms. He inhaled deeply, letting the rich scent fill his senses. As he took a sip, he noticed the slight bitterness, the warmth spreading through his body. For the first time in years, he wasn't just drinking coffee. He was experiencing it. It lasted only a few moments before his mind wandered again. Maria used to make coffee just like this. He felt the familiar sting of longing. But instead of getting lost in it, he simply noticed the thought and let it pass, like a cloud drifting across the sky. He returned to his coffee. This is mindfulness. Over the next few weeks, David experimented with other moments of mindfulness. When he washed the dishes, he focused on the feel of the warm water on his hands. When he walked, he noticed each step, the rhythm of his breath. One evening, as he sat on his porch watching the sunset, he realized something. For years, he had been trapped in time, either drowning in the past or fearing the future. But when he practiced mindfulness, he was free. There was no regret, no anxiety, just the simple, undeniable presence of now. One day at a time, breath by breath, he was finding his way back to peace. Loving kindness, the path to healing. It had been months since David first started practicing mindfulness. He had begun to notice the world around him in a way he never had before. The warmth of the sun on his skin, the scent of fresh cut grass, the simple joy of feeling his feet grounded to the earth. But despite these small awakenings, there was still a weight he carried within him. One evening, as he sat alone on his couch, flipping through old photo albums, he found himself staring at a picture of Maria. She was laughing, eyes crinkled at the corners, holding his hand as they stood by the ocean. A familiar ache swelled in his chest. He had spent so much time trying to quiet his thoughts, but nothing could silence the longing, the guilt, the sadness that still lingered. The next day, he met Michael for another walk. "I've been practicing mindfulness," David said, kicking at a small rock on the path. "It helps, but there's still something inside me, something heavy." Michael nodded knowingly. "Have you tried Metta?" David frowned. "Metta, loving kindness meditation," Michael explained. "It's a practice of sending goodwill to yourself and to others. It's like stretching a tight muscle in your heart. You start with yourself, then extend it outward, even to people you struggle with." David scoffed. "Sending kindness to myself? That feels unnatural." Michael smiled. "That's how I felt too. But think about it. If you wouldn't speak harshly to a friend, why do you do it to yourself?" That night, David sat on the floor, legs crossed, back straight, just as Michael had taught him. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. "May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be free from suffering." The words felt foreign, awkward. He had spent so long punishing himself, with guilt, with regret. How could he wish himself happiness when he felt like he had failed Maria in her final days? But Michael's words echoed in his mind. "If you wouldn't speak harshly to a friend, why do you do it to yourself?" So he tried again. "May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be free from suffering." But he didn't believe it. Not yet. But he kept going. The next day, he tried again. And the next. Slowly, the words began to soften, something inside him, like a river, gently wearing down a rough stone. After a few weeks, Michael suggested taking it a step further. "Now, extend it to someone you love," he said. David thought of Maria, the woman who had been his anchor, his partner, his best friend. May Maria be happy. May Maria be free from suffering. This time, the words felt right. Then came the hardest step. Michael placed a gentle hand on David's shoulder. "Now, try sending loving kindness to someone you struggle with." David stiffened. "Why would I do that?" "Because carrying resentment is like holding on to a burning coal. It only harms you." David knew who he had to choose. His younger brother, Thomas. The two had barely spoken in years. Their falling out over an inheritance had left a wound that neither had attempted to heal. That night, as he sat in his quiet living room, he closed his eyes once again. May Thomas be happy. May Thomas be healthy. May Thomas be free from suffering. His jaw tightened. He didn't want to say it, but he did. And, surprisingly, something shifted. The bitterness, the anger, it loosened just a little. Over the weeks, David continued the practice. Some days it felt easy. Other days, not so much. But he realized something profound. The more he practiced loving kindness, the lighter he felt. For years, he had thought healing meant erasing pain. But now, he saw it differently. Healing wasn't about forgetting. It was about meeting pain with compassion. about allowing himself to feel loss without letting it consume him, about making space for love, even in the midst of grief. Point one morning. As he sat on his porch sipping coffee, a thought crossed his mind. He picked up the phone and, for the first time in years, called his brother. When Thomas answered, there was hesitation in his voice. But David simply said, "How have you been?" A long pause. Then a quiet reply. "I've missed you, David." And just like that, another weight lifted. David finally understood that loving kindness wasn't about pretending pain didn't exist. It was about holding it gently, with warmth, with patience. That it was about learning to love, not just others, but himself. The art of letting go, releasing the weight of the past. David stood in front of the old wooden wardrobe in his bedroom, the doors slightly ajar. Inside, among neatly folded clothes and forgotten belongings, hung a single navy blue sweater. It was Maria's favorite, soft, worn at the cuffs, carrying the faintest scent of lavender. For years, he had refused to move it, let alone touch it. It was as if letting go of this one object meant letting go of Maria herself. He reached out, hesitantly, fingers brushing against the fabric. A wave of grief surged through him, tightening his chest. Letting go? How could he? Yet, the words of the Buddha surfaced in his mind. Attachment is the root of suffering. Michael had explained this concept to him weeks ago. Suffering comes not from losing something, but from our refusal to accept that all things change. David clenched his jaw. He knew deep down that Maria wasn't in this sweater. She wasn't in the chair she used to sit in, or in the old recipe cards she had left behind. She was in his heart, in his memories, in the love they had shared. And yet, part of him held on, afraid that if he loosened his grip, she would disappear. Completely. Later that day, he sat with Michael on their usual park bench. "I understand what you're saying about impermanence," David said, watching the autumn leaves drift to the ground. "But knowing something and feeling it are two different things." Michael nodded. "That's true. But tell me, have you ever tried holding sand in your fist?" David frowned. "What do you mean?" Michael picked up a handful of dry sand and let it rest in his open palm. "If you hold it gently, it stays. But if you grip it too tightly—" He clenched his fist, and the sand slipped through his fingers. David sighed. "So you're saying that by holding on, I'm actually losing more?" Michael smiled. "Exactly. The more we try to keep things the way they were, the more we suffer. But when we hold life with an open hand, we find peace." That night, David sat alone in his living room, an old photo album on his lap. He flipped through the pages, stopping at a picture of him and Maria on their honeymoon. They were young, laughing, arms wrapped around each other as the ocean stretched behind them. That he smiled. For the first time, he didn't feel the crushing weight of loss. He felt gratitude for the love they had shared, for the years they had been given. Maria had once told him, "Love isn't something you hold on to. It's something you carry with you." He finally understood. The next morning, he took the navy blue sweater from the closet and gently folded it. He placed it in a donation box, not as an act of forgetting, but as an act of freeing himself from the fear of loss. As he walked outside, the crisp morning air filling his lungs, he felt lighter than he had in years. Letting go wasn't about losing. It was about making space for life to continue. The power of rejoicing, finding joy in others' happiness. David sat alone at a corner table in his favorite cafe, stirring his coffee absent-mindedly. Outside the window, life bustled as usual. People chatting, couples laughing, children tugging at their parents' hands. For the longest time, scenes like this had made him feel hollow. Watching others happy only reminded him of what he had lost. He used to love coming to this cafe with Maria. Now, every visit felt like a quiet ache, a reminder that he was alone. But today, something was different. As he lifted his cup to take a sip, his eyes landed on a young couple sitting by the window. The woman leaned in, smiling brightly, as the man reached across the table to take her hands in his. There was something familiar about it. The way they looked at each other, the unspoken warmth between them. David felt the usual pang of longing creep in. That used to be me and Maria. But before the sadness could take hold, he remembered something. He had read, just the night before, a Buddhist teaching on Mudita, or sympathetic joy. True happiness grows when we rejoice in the happiness of others. At first, the concept had felt foreign. Wasn't joy something personal? How could someone else's happiness possibly bring him peace? Yet here he was, watching this young couple. And instead of sinking into sorrow, he decided to try something different. He took a slow breath and, in his mind, offered them a silent wish. May they always find love and joy. The moment was subtle, almost imperceptible, but something within him softened. He wasn't pushing his own grief away, but for the first time, he was allowing joy, someone else's joy, to exist alongside it. Later that day, as he walked through the park, he noticed a little girl squealing with delight as she chased after a butterfly. An old man sat on a bench, feeding the birds with a serene smile on his face. A group of teenagers played music, laughing as they sang along. David had walked this path so many times before, but today he saw it differently. Instead of comparing, instead of feeling left out, he simply let himself witness joy in its purest form. Happiness is not a limited resource, Michael had once told him. Another person's joy does not take away from yours. In fact, when you celebrate it, you multiply it. That evening, as he sat on his porch watching the sun dip below the horizon, he realized something profound. He had spent so much time mourning what he had lost that he had forgotten to celebrate what still remained. Maria would have wanted him to smile again. And so, with the golden light of dusk settling around him, he made a quiet vow. From now on, I will choose to rejoice, not just in my own happiness, but in the happiness of others. And for the first time in a long time, David felt a sense of peace he never thought possible. Integration, bringing mindfulness into everyday life. David sat at his kitchen table, watching the steam rise from his morning coffee. The routine was the same as it had always been. Wake up, brew a pot, sit in silence. But something was different. Now, for years, his mornings had been filled with restless thoughts, memories of Maria, regrets, worries about the future. His mind had always been somewhere else, anywhere but here. But today he simply sat. He felt the warmth of the cup against his palms. He inhaled the rich aroma. He took a sip, letting the taste settle on his tongue. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't lost in the past. He wasn't anxious about the future. He was present. Michael's words echoed in his mind. Peace isn't something you wait for, David. It's something you practice. And so, that's what he did. Throughout his day, he made small choices, simple, intentional moments of mindfulness. When he washed the dishes, he focused on the sensation of water on his hands. When he walked, he felt the ground beneath his feet, steady and sure. When he spoke to others, he truly listened, rather than just waiting for his turn to talk. He no longer rushed through his meals or filled the silence with distractions. He no longer let his mind be pulled in 1,000 directions. Instead, he trained himself, again and again, to return to now. And with each passing day, something incredible happened. Life, which had once felt dull and gray, began to regain its color. He found joy in the simplest things, a shared smile with a stranger, the rhythm of rain against his window, the crispness of autumn air. His grief hadn't vanished, nor had his challenges, but they no longer consumed him, because now, he understood, happiness isn't found in the past or the future. It's only ever found in the present moment. And so, as he sipped his coffee that morning, he smiled, not because life was perfect, but because, for the first time in years, he was fully living it. Integration, bringing mindfulness into everyday life. David sat at his kitchen table, watching the steam rise from his morning coffee. The routine was the same as it had always been. Wake up, brew a pot, sit in silence. But something was different. Now, for years, his mornings had been filled with restless thoughts, memories of Maria, regrets, worries about the future. His mind had always been somewhere else, anywhere but here. But today he simply sat. He felt the warmth of the cup against his palms. He inhaled the rich aroma. He took a sip, letting the taste settle on his tongue. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't lost in the past. He wasn't anxious about the future. He was present. Michael's words echoed in his mind. Peace isn't something you wait for, David. It's something you practice. And so, that's what he did. Throughout his day, he made small choices, simple, intentional moments of mindfulness. When he washed the dishes, he focused on the sensation of water on his hands. When he walked, he felt the ground beneath his feet, steady and sure. When he spoke to others, he truly listened, rather than just waiting for his turn to talk. He no longer rushed through his meals, or filled the silence with distractions. He no longer let his mind be pulled in 1,000 directions. Instead, he trained himself, again and again, to return to now. And with each passing day, something incredible happened. Life, which had once felt dull and gray, began to regain its color. He found joy in the simplest things, a shared smile with a stranger, the rhythm of rain against his window, the crispness of autumn air. His grief hadn't vanished, nor had his challenges, but they no longer consumed him, because now, he understood, happiness isn't found in the past or the future. It's only ever found in the present moment. And so, as he sipped his coffee, that morning, he smiled, not because life was perfect, but because, for the first time in years, he was fully living it.